All right, guys. So a smart object is a layer that contains image data from raster or vector images, such as Photoshop or Illustrator files. Smart objects preserve an image source content with all of its original characteristics, enabling you to perform non-destructive editing to the layer. So just by that, we realize that smart objects is used in non-destructive editing. All right. In Photoshop, you can embed the contents of an image into a Photoshop document. In Photoshop, you can also create linked smart objects whose contents are referenced from external image files. Contents of a linked smart objects are updated when its source image file changes. Now, do you guys remember the difference between a linked smart object and an embedded smart object? Yes, no?
The link, I think, is okay. If you include it into your document and you try and send it, it wouldn't go through. Like if let's say I try and send for you, because it linked, it's not going on display. Like you wouldn't be able to edit it.
You will be able to edit it, right?
And then, yeah.
Okay. Anybody else has any other understanding of linked versus embedded? No. All right. So an embedded object, right, is one where all of the information about the object is stored in the Photoshop document. All right. And a linked object saves a small rasterized, a full-size copy, but rasterized version of the document, right? But it's referenced, the smart object and the additional properties of it are referenced from the actual linked file. So I'll try to explain that again in more detail in a little bit. But for now, just know you can have a linked and an embedded smart object, all right? Linked smart objects are distinct from duplicated instances of a smart object within a Photoshop document. With linked smart objects, you can use a shared source across multiple Photoshop documents, which is a familiar and welcome concept for web designers. All right, let's look at the benefits of smart objects, and then I'll move into giving you some practical examples of how we use them and why we would want to use one type over the other, okay? So with smart objects, you can perform non-destructive transforms. You can also scale, rotate, skew, distort, perspective transform, or wrap a layer without losing original data or quality, because the transforms don't affect the original data. You guys understand that? Not quite? Okay, I'll give you a practical example in a little bit. Let's just move on. Let's just go through the benefits first, right? Second benefit, you can work with vector data, such as vector artwork from Illustrator that otherwise would be rasterized in Photoshop. And you guys remember the difference between vector artwork or vector data and bitmap data? Yes? No? Excuse me, why you say Helix?
No, not entirely.
Not entirely. Okay. I'll try and go for that. Anybody else doesn't remember what is vector data as opposed to raster data? Okay. All right, well, I'll run through that again in a bit. You can also perform non-destructive filtering, meaning you can use your filters, right? And you can edit the filters applied to smart objects at any time. And with regular objects, you can't do that. Once you apply a filter, it changes the pixels, right? And you cannot exactly come back to the original data. You can also edit one smart object and automatically update all of its linked instances. You can apply a layer mask that's either linked or unlinked to the smart object layer. And you can try various designs with low resolution placeholder images that you later replace with final versions. All right. Here's what you can't do. And I can't, meaning cannot, right? You cannot perform operations that alter pixel data, such as painting, dodging, burning, or cloning directly to a smart object layer unless it is first converted into a regular layer, which will be rasterized. And everybody remember what rasterization is? If you don't, we're gonna talk about it again. To perform operations that alter pixel data, you can edit the contents of a smart object, clone a new layer above the smart object layer, edit duplicates of the smart object, or create a new layer. All right, so we're going to look at smart objects. Let me just switch my screen. All right. Okay, everybody can see Photoshop, right?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so a smart object. You can create a smart object in a number of different ways, right? And I'm gonna start with type. If you notice here, this text is a smart object. You can identify it by that icon, that little icon here in the layers panel, right? I'm going to show you a few different ways that we can create smart objects. So one way is, let's use a text layer. You could use any layer or any group of layers and right click on it in the layers palette and click convert to smart object. That's the easiest way for you to get a smart object. Once you've done that, it changes from the layer changes from, in this case, a text layer into a smart object layer. Everybody see that? Let me go back again so you can see. So this is a text layer. Notice text layer is identified by the little T icon in the layers palette. If I right click on the layers palette and I click convert to smart object, the layer changes from a text layer to a smart object layer. Right? Now, you could do the same thing with different types of layers, text layers, bitmap layers, vector layers, shapes, and so on, and it will work just the same. So again, let me demonstrate with multiple shapes. I'm going to put a square or a rectangle and an ellipse. Just so we grasp the concept properly, I'm going to use two different colors. So on the layers palette, again, notice we have one layer, the ellipse, and one layer, which is the rectangle. We can select both of them by holding down Shift or Control. So Control will allow you to select individual layers. Shift will allow you to select the entire range of layers from bottom to top of your, based on your selection. All right. So we want to use Control. Click on all of the layers that we want included in Smart Object. In this case, we have the rectangle and we have the ellipse. And then we would right click in the layers panel and click convert to smart objects. And then those two objects would now be condensed into one smart object layer. Does everybody get that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. But let's do it again.
Let's do it again. Okay. So I'm going to start, this time I'm going to use two different types of objects. I'm going to start with a text layer, right? And we're going to, let me just do it properly. So let me increase the size. So text. Okay. So this is a regular text layer, right? That I put using my type tool. Everybody saw that. If you look on the layers panel, you will see the text layer identified with the T. I'm also going to add with it an ellipse, right? Again, I just put it just below it. So, but the placement doesn't matter. Now we have two separate layers, the ellipse layer and the text layer, right? So a shape and text. If I select both of them, and to select both of them, you click on the first one in the layers palette, you press Control on your keyboard and you click on the second layer in the layers palette. All right. Now there's also a different way. If you can select it by clicking on the individual objects and holding Shift on the artboard itself, on the document. Right. So if you click on the text layer, hold down Shift and then click on the ellipse or the shape layer, it will have the same effect, right? Selecting both of them. Now, to convert that into a smart object, you would right click on it while they're selected and click convert to smart object. It's that simple. Everybody got that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, keeping it simple before we complicate the smart objects, what is the advantage of the smart objects over your regular layers? Let me give you an example here. So one of the things is filtering. Have you guys experimented with filters yet in Photoshop? No?
No, not as yet.
All right. Well, we'll have a class and we'll go through filters, but basically filters allow you to add certain special effects to your layers, right? However, most filters act on raster layers, meaning you cannot apply them to text and you can't apply them to vector layers. So I'm going to attempt to apply a filter to, let's do it to the text layer. It might be more dramatic that way, right? And let's use the blur. Everybody knows what blur is, right? You have a pretty good idea what's going to happen if I click blur as a filter. All right, we're going to apply Gaussian blur. Notice what happens. We get a notification popping up. It says this type layer must be rasterized or converted to a smart object before proceeding. If rasterized, its text will no longer be editable. And earlier I asked you guys if you remembered what rasterization is. Anybody can remember what it is to rasterize a layer?
I think it's converting it from the vector into the bitmap or something.
Right. So it converts the data, when you rasterize, it converts all vector data into bitmap or into pixels. All right. So right now, just to illustrate with the text, I'm going to duplicate. So if I rasterize this text layer, it looks the same, right? But I can no longer go in with my type tool and attempt to edit it because it's no longer text, it's just a picture of text. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
All right, cool. So the options that we have, if we were to apply the blur filter to that layer, is to rasterize, meaning convert to pixels, or to use a smart object. What do you think would be the difference between those options? Rasterizing or converting to a smart object? Why would you choose one over the other?
Yes, you choose the smart objects because you will be able to, I guess, edit it. It will be non-destructive.
It would be non-destructive. Can you give me an example why you might want to rasterize the layer though?
If you want to turn to a picture, I don't know.
Right. If you wanted to edit the pixels after you were done. But for most cases, you would opt to turn it into a smart object. All right. So again, I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to turn one layer into a smart object. So the layer at the top, I'm going to convert it to a smart object. And the layer at the bottom, I'm going to rasterize. Okay. Then we're going to apply the filter to those two layers to see the various effects. Let's do the rasterized version first. So we go filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Now Gaussian blur is a filter that will give you a nice even blur across the entire layer. All right, so increase it a bit so we can see. So that it completely disappears. But everybody can see my Gaussian blur?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
I'm going to click OK right now, and that filter has been applied. However, in that case, with that layer, what you see is what you get. There's nothing more you can do to build on to that image. You can apply more filters, you can apply color overlays, you can apply different effects. But let's say you realize that text was spelling correctly and you wanted to change the second T, for instance, to a capital T, right? you would not have that ability. You'd have to go all the way back to the beginning, type the text layer, rasterize it, and then apply your filter. However, let's try it with the smart object. All right. So the smart object, we can apply a filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Right. Notice it works almost the same. I'm going to use the same settings, 12.5 pixels. Right. And the filter has been applied. Notice though the differences in the layers palette. In one layer we simply have the pixels, right? In the other layer we have the text smart object as well as a smart filter, right? A smart filter basically means we can go in and edit it again. So let's say right now you're looking at the final result and you determine that that blur is a little bit too intense. You want it to reduce it a bit. With the rasterized version, there's nothing you can do. You'll have to go and remake the layer again, create a new text layer, rasterize, and give it another go with the filter. However, with this one, I can actually double click on my filter and come and adjust my filter again, even after I've applied it. I can come back and adjust it as many times as I want. I can make it as big as I want, as small as I want. Right? And not just that, because it's a smart object, we can edit the smart object and the smart object maintains all of the editable content, all of the vector content in the original layers. So how would we edit the smart object layer? So if we right click on the layer in the layers panel and we click edit contents, it's going to open up the smart object, the original smart object in a new Photoshop document. Notice it says text.psv. And what we have in here, a text layer. Everybody can see that?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes,
I'm going
sir.
to change that last T, second T, into a capital T. All right. It sort of goes outside of the image area. That's fine. What I will do is just make it a little bit bigger. I'll just make it a little bit bigger. Too much. All right, and save and close. So close the document, the last will save, click yes, and wait for it to update. If you notice now, you can clearly see that the last T on that top layer is a capital T, right?
Yes, sir.
If we wanted to, for instance, change the entire word, let's just change it to edit, E-D-I-T. Let's confirm that. Close, save, yes. Notice we have a completely different word with our filter applied. We have no chance of doing that sort of edit with the rasterized version. All it is just a bunch of blurry pixels. You guys see the difference?
Yes, sir.
Right. So that is one of the major benefits of smart objects. If we were to go back to our list of benefits. It would be that you are able to perform non-destructive filtering. All right. Okay. Moving on. So we know that we can use an existing layer, whether it be vector, text, pixels, and convert it to a smart object within a document. But there are different other ways that you can actually get a smart object onto a new document. All right. Let me give you the two that you know. So place embedded and place linked will allow you to place a smart object, which will allow you to place a file, which you have saved already or saved previously, right, into the document that you're currently working with as a smart object. So to give an example, I'm going to just open a file that I was working with a little earlier today. which just so happens to be a wine label. All right, simple wine label. Everybody can see that. Now, that by itself is a Photoshop document. Everybody can see that. I have all of my layers right here. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right. I can actually import that file onto this document as a smart object. So before I do anything, I'm going to close that file. And I'm going to do the first option, which is place embedded. You guys remember what the embedded option is? Somebody tell me. Nobody? All right, so I place this one embedded. While you guys thinking about what is an embedded smart object and what is a linked smart object, I'm going to place a linked smart object, right? The same file, but I'm going to place it as a linked object. So place linked. All right, guys. So we have that file placed on our document twice. Once as a linked object, once as an embedded object. Can anybody tell me the difference between the linked object? And I'm going to name them. I'm going to call it label linked. And I'm only doing it for now because it might be hard for you to see the icon, but the linked object has a little chain icon here, and the embedded object has a little image icon here. Everybody see the difference between the two, right? Just in case you don't, label embedded. Can anybody tell me the difference between the linked and the embedded? No? Nobody?
It's not the fact that if you go in another document, one will follow and the other one will not. Not that?
No, not that. Nobody knows for certain? Okay, we've gone through it already, but let me just explain it again. So the embedded object, which is the one at the top, right? All of the information about that object or that layer or that file is saved in the current document that you're working with. All right. However, the linked layer, which is the one at the bottom, is referenced from the original file in its original location. So here's what I'm going to do. Everybody just take a note of the file that we currently have on the screen. It has the linked and the embedded, or the embedded and the linked layers, all right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to open that file. The file itself in a new document as a Photoshop document. I'm going to make a pretty blatant change to it, right? I'm going to take the happy birthday here and I'm going to make it invisible. Yeah. And then I'm going to save it. What do you think is going to happen on my other document? I'm going to close it right now. Close. Is that what you had imagined to happen? Remember, they looked exactly the same when we left. I edited the original file in its original location, and I came back and that file is suddenly missing a happy birthday as well.
The second file is the link file?
The second file is the linked file.
Okay.
The link file self-updating every time you change it. It's a live update. So any of the changes you make, it will be
Right. So any of the changes that you make on the original file will be updated on all the linked copies. Guys, give me just a minute. All right. All right, guys. Sorry about that. End of the couple of things to do. All right. So you guys begin to understand what is the linked file. So the linked file doesn't actually reside on the document that you're working with. It just pulls the information from the original file wherever it is saved. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
All
Yes,
right.
sir.
Okay, good. So that is the linked. Now, I'm making the linked version that was edited invisible for us to work with the embedded file for a bit. Okay. Now, I don't want you to confuse linked smart object, right, with an embedded smart object that is linked. So just hold on for a second. Let me build on that. So notice we have one smart object here. I'm going to duplicate, and that is the embedded smart object. Everybody sees that, right? I'm going to duplicate the smart object. So now we have two copies, right? When you duplicate a smart object like that, and by the way, the method that I use was I just press the Alt key and drag on the currently selected layer, so it gave me a copy. All right. When you duplicate a smart object like that, what you have are linked copies, which means that if you change the original or you change any of the copies, it's going to affect all of the files. All right, all of the smart objects. So in that case, again, I'm going to right click on the original and click edit contents. All right. And this time I'm going to make the name. The name here is Von Clark. I'm going to make that invisible, easy change. And we're going to close. It's going to ask me if I want to save. I'm going to say yes. What do you think will happen with the two files, the two copies of the embedded file in the previous document? Is that what you had imagined?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. So if you change one, the other one will be changed as well. Now, notice, let me put the linked one back. Notice the linked is still unchanged. It has nothing to do with that, right? Okay. What if you want to duplicate a smart object? So let me go back. What if you want to duplicate a smart object, but not have it linked? So in that case, we want to duplicate this one, but have it not linked. Well, in that case, you can go to, with the layer selected, you can go to layer, all right? And go to new and layer via copy. Everybody sees that? That will give you a duplicate. Now I'm going to edit the original again. So right click, edit contents. This time I'm going to make the happy birthday visible. And what do you think will happen now when we save and close? All right, guys, just give me 1 second again. All right, I apologize. 1 minute.